Hello, there were all kinds of organized crimes associated with the World Trade Center, and right where they are victims slash hyper victims at locations A through Z at the same time. Right where the responses are collusion slash S as victim predators slash hyper victim, hyper predators, hyper predators for the breaching method, where they make drugs. And then they said, like Charlie Kirk, I put a link to a YouTube short, and he's speaking about marijuana. And he says, well, they know it's a gateway drug. He's using research locations and polling locations such as Quinnipiac University. And they have collusions with people that work at Hartford Hospital named Brendan Leahy. More than one person with the name Brendan Leahy. And then they have females in their family that work with the triage, with the mental health care side. They faked conversations with me and to other people and into databases and through the mail, but I can't get them to communicate with me. They're using wire and mail crime methods. These are people also with the lawyers there, with the security, foreign and domestic military, intelligence. They have roles next to hospitals too, multiple hospitals and fire campuses too, all ages and natures of campuses, intercities and intra-cities, at crime scenes next to them. Same with the news, the same ones at Hartford Hospital, involved with all natures of drugs and medicines, crimes with the same house slash S. Also collusions with syntax with the Joshua Julian between Facebook and YouTube. And there are people with upskirt pictures on Twitter with the FBI involved with them also, with former director of the FBI, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. This is also relative to confessions that are made to everyone, the way the breaching method knew they would be. But it knew simultaneously nature would be demonstrating that the breach, everyone has been making confessions to a hyperforeign breaching method. So it employed those, it discerned and employed, it knew they would be before they were. And it discerned them. It made everyone collusion slash S, blaming other things, others themselves, forcing it, and then pretending it's debatable. And needing to get away with that. And the breaching method showed them how to get away with that. For example, by self-valuing what the people of history said, replacing what our founders declassified about that. When people bring up James Monroe Doctrine, you could have it memorized. You're going to be using knowledge for good and evil, of knowledge of good and evil to get over on what is true always. If you have replaced with James Madison's plan and what his founders communicated and why and how they had to have that declassified because they didn't have free speech. If you're pretending that it's debatable that why and how they did not have free speech, you're being used also to sense. The breaching method uses everyone to sense. It taught you guys to speak about your countries in America. It taught you at campuses A through Z, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly. And while that was nature's demonstrations of it, you guys are styles of logic, natures of logic. That only hurt. Sides of issues and exceptions use tactical ulterior. And styles of it that in other words, you guys are changing your faith and what people say about the predicate acts. That's what I'm speaking about, a predicate acts method here. I'm not even a lawyer. Which Charles Court place next to Webb House, where George Washington had to come right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. It's about how even if it was completely made up, the witch trials. There was slavery left entrenched in northern colonies, southern colonies, because that was forced by a breaching method. We were supposed to understand this clearer than day. Hear many pray. People want to go, well, you read them, they quote books. The school book depository associated with the assassination of President/Chief Kennedy. Clearer than day, the campuses have and have had collusion/S with an organized crime method worse than war crimes. When people use phrases like war crimes, they are measured and capable of defending that and of affording to be, let alone to protract short words to defend their countries properly at countries A through Z. Now systems tactical ulterior from the individual species body of individual bodies and all group differences generated by that which is generating group differences non-distinctly across species bodies too, so that we could discern that there is one identity of value/value progression that all things share, while not but anyway. And it is relative/hyper-relative to it being positive or negative, the way it communicates about positive and negative here. But not, I don't mean about the way we discern, like, oh, being angry is negative. In other words, no. I mean, to understand this, you have to understand with the hyper invisible, but still discernible, and with the hyper simultaneous. We are distinct from other species bodies, but we are non-distinct from them, and we are simultaneous with them. But per that further, neither us nor them, a further distinct identity of simultaneous nature for science. So there's no excuse that's honest. But, replacing James Madison's plan and what the freedom founders communicated, there's no excuse but to self-value. Books that were left criminally foreign influence. We have a means to discern that. We're supposed to understand how the databases were used since before computers to exploit us at other locations /S2 where it is collusion. How are you? The leaders, President/Chief Trump, being a chief, they are not compatible. And this is also ciphered to be deciphered, just as is black pupils, whites of eyes. In our nature of debates about this, we're not supposed to leave out how the breaching method was still entrenched, only permitting roles against all women, and only permitting anyone to sense if they were in trouble, if they didn't sense anyone trying to go against the rules, against all women, against black pupils, whites of eyes, against Native. Multi-front against human differences. Not to kill everybody, but maintain everybody as a state /S incapable of defending themselves from nature's demonstrations /S of the collusion /S with the human fact should be nature breaching method. And with that scientific value replaced right from the communications of James Madison and of the plural founders who declassified why and how they didn't have the security to have their names declassified, and why and how James Madison is the only founder that we know they declassified the name of. This is inseparable from any proper treatment. For example, of the Monroe Doctrine. Instead, people still are using the words that people said, leaving out why and how nobody had free speech, why and how nobody wanted collusions against all women, nobody wanted collusions with slavery. Well, why was it there then? It was entrenched since before our founders were born per the same method that has our campuses framing our founders as other than they asked to be described and maybe changing who they are, because they're distinct from the people that were counter-extorted and forced to help at the same time with the Declaration of Independence, with the Constitutional Convention, and with the Civil War. The North and the South were not allowed to speak about slavery against women's rights, against Native, unless in internationally monitored conversations. And that also having to accord with the sense and sensibilities of overt criminal enterprises, terrorists, international companies, international countries that have the same torture, extortion, slavery method already entrenched and forced right through their founding still. Specifically, too, to keep the future, which is now, used remotely, too. And they've shown they need to value this having been our founders' words and nature's words simultaneously replaced. Our founders' communications, rather. And their words. James Madison went into details about how everyone, there was all these multi-front impositions on human rights, and was only permitted to make subject treatments, leaving out how they're all connected, and to the breaching method. Vaccines that teach us things, but long. Yeah, thank you.